Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
And my very great pleasure to welcome to the program. Now, I better get this right. I've just had the last 2 minutes deep intuition about how to pronounce the name. Suzanne Brooks-Princevic, a very good morning and welcome to you. How did I do?
Good morning, John. You did that very well. And good morning, Tiffany.
Lovely to talk to you. Suzanne has written this book, Dubrovnik, My Love, and a gorgeous town. Perhaps we should mention, get it out of the way, Game of Thrones early on, because that may mean it's slightly more relatable to some of the people who got entranced in that TV series. And Dubrovnik, very important as a background.
Yes, it is. It was. Yes.
It was, indeed. Now, what is your background to Dubrovnik and Croatia, Suzanne?
My background to Dubrovnik is very much my husband, to Gaspar. If I hadn't met Gaspar, I wouldn't have probably had anything much to do with Dubrovnik. But he came from there, and when I married him, I actually married Dubrovnik. I didn't know it at the time.
Well, that wouldn't be a bad thing. It's a gorgeous town, isn't it?
It could be here. Yeah, I could have married someone from somewhere a lot.
Yes, indeed. So what we're talking about, Dubrovnik, My Love, is this a true story?
More or less it is. Yes, it pretty much follows the life of Gaspar from the time he actually escaped during the time of Yugoslavia when it was under Josip Broz Tito. And it was close to 1 million young guys mostly escaped mostly over the Adriatic or the Austrian Alps. And it follows his journey to Italy, quite a year or two in Italy, and then he immigrated to Australia, and it covers his journey through Australia, with a lot of experiences, getting acquainted with a different country, a different language, and then finally he came over to New Zealand.
I understand that there was a long arm from Yugoslavia that followed him to Australia as well.
Well, I wouldn't say so much followed him. They followed all the ones who had escaped, and wherever they went to, whether it was Italy, Austria, Australia, they had their secret agents all over the place. And they weren't very nice guys. And he did have some trouble with them.
It's interesting, this, because Tito's communism was thought in the West at that time as being a slightly more humane form of communism.
Yes, and I wrote that in my book. I think there's a comment to that on the back of the book. It was looked at, and when I met Gaspar, I too was of the impression that he was quite a nice guy, and that Yugoslavia was more freer and not such a strict communist regime. But I was very wrong.
Indeed, and that comes through. And then, of course, when Tito died, the whole thing blew apart.
It did, that's right. It did. That was in the 80s. There were 6 republics, and the 6 republics had been really quite separate. They had their own identities, and he joined them all together under Yugoslavia, Union of Slavs, Yugoslavia.
Yes.
But it didn't work. He had some ideas of socialism, and he was quite strict in what he wanted. Unfortunately, a lot of people were unemployed, and the regime was very strict at that time in the 50s when Gaspar was trying to look for work, and he was in an industry where it was really, you needed to have the tourists. Not many were coming. And it was at the end of the war too. It was in the early 50s, so that didn't help. And many of them had to escape out the country because you weren't able to get a passport and leave.
Yes.
He stopped that, so so mostly they had to take off over the sea. But you didn't have people smugglers in those days. And most of them that left were from the Croatian coast. This was Dalmatia. So that's why when you come to New Zealand, a lot of them were called Dalmatians.
That's right.
Because they came from that coastal province. Also a lot from Slovenia. And like I said, they came over the Adriatic to Italy, which wasn't far away, like going from, I suppose, Wellington to South Island, sort of like that. So it was pretty close. And then, or else they went up to northern part of Croatia, where they could cross over the Alps, the Austrian Alps, the Italian Alps, into Italy. In other words, they got to pretty much with Italy, and Italy copped it all, like they sort of do today.
Yes.
But that time there was no people smugglers. Most of them down the coast of the Croatians, they would have easy access to a boat, because a lot of them were fishermen, or families were fishermen.
That's right.
So it wasn't too difficult. And they didn't have these rubber rafts and that sort of thing. So they'd row over there or motor over there, and they'd be lucky if the secret police didn't catch them on the way. If the secret police got you, that was the end of you.
Of course, one of the issues now isn't so much the traffickers or the smugglers as traffickers. It's a business for some people these days, isn't it?
Yeah, you didn't have that then. And when the Croatians arrived in Italy, that time, they were very well treated. They ended up in camps, and often for a short time, or they could be up to 4 years. His brother was there waiting to go to America, and at that time America was not really taking people in easily, and he had to wait for 4 years. But Gaspar, he only waited, I think, a couple of years, and he was then got on a ship to Australia, which was really, really crying out for labour. And in fact, on the ship was almost 80% were Italians going to Australia.
Well, a few Italians went to Australia, no doubt about that. Tell me, what was it like for Jasper when Yugoslavia blew apart and Dubrovnik was bombed? I know I was enormously upset at that time, and at that stage I hadn't been to Dubrovnik. It just seemed to be an outrage. It must have been so much worse for him.
It was, it really cut him, especially the bombing of Dubrovnik. As I call it, Dubrovnik, my love. He had two loves.
Yes.
One is Dubrovnik, the other one, I guess, was me.
Yes.
So when that happened, he was very traumatized, as were a lot of people here, Croatians in the community. You were hearing one story on the radio about what was happening, and if you talk to relatives and that over in Croatia, you were hearing quite a different story. It was like if you were in the Second World War and you were actually getting all your information from Germany.
Oh, really? That bad?
Sort of like that, yeah. You were getting it from the wrong place.
If you go to Dubrovnik now, you can still see bullet marks in the walls. If you go up on the gondola, up on the hill, you can see where there was a gun emplacement that was peppering Dubrovnik.
That's right. Yeah, it was. Very heavily. Dubrovnik was very, very badly bombed. In fact, if you take a walk around the walls, go all around.
Which you should, by the way, if you can, if you're up to it. Yes, it's wonderful.
You should. It's amazing. And they're so wide, a car can drive around it. And you look down at all the inner houses below you. They've all got these red tile roofs.
Yes.
So you look at how many are new. Every new roof you see, which is almost every one, was new because it was bombed.
That's right.
So in 96, 97, they started rebuilding them all. And they put all the new roofs on. But underneath the roofs, you still had a lot of damage in the rooms that still needed a lot of work to put them right.
We went to Dubrovnik, as is obvious, and I absolutely loved the place. And we were told that now, because we're on a cruise ship, and we were told, now this is the one place you have to take your passport because Croatia is not part of the Schengen arrangement. So take your passport. So we took our passport, showed it when we went in, and when we came back, we couldn't actually find the passport. We're all getting flustered. And the very nice young lady, I mean, she was just a teenage lady who was the border guard. She says, "Oh, don't worry, pass through, I trust you." And I'm just thinking, what a change it was for us to Jasper way back then. So things have certainly changed in Croatia these days, haven't they?
Yeah. It was quite, it was, I think, in the early 60s, it was about then, or maybe it was the very late 50s, that Tito actually lifted the barrier to that you could then go, get a passport and go, and a lot of people did. Reason for that was the unemployment in Croatia, well, Yugoslavia, was just so bad.
Indeed.
And besides, he did say by doing that he got rid of a lot of the troublemakers.
Oh, I suppose that's he wasn't looking at Jasper at that stage, was he? Was Jasper politically active, by the way? I mean, was he a problem for Tito?
No, he was just trying to make a living.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all he was doing.
As many of those young, and particularly men, I imagine, were. I mean, that was their motivation. Yeah,
that was all. They were trying to do a living, and when they couldn't get the work there, well, the best thing, they really needed to go somewhere, Austria, across to Australia, try to get out, go to always America. America was like everywhere was America, no matter you went to Australia, New Zealand, it was all America to them. So they were trying to get out to find work.
Does he live in New Zealand now or not?
Oh, yes.
Because many Croats are here, and they've been so productive over the years. And, of course, a prime example is Lord right now, who's, done so much for this country in terms of music. But the Croatians have been so productive and so much part of this community. Has Jasper and the Croatian community felt welcomed in New Zealand?
I think they have. In the very early days, when before trouble with Tito and that, when a lot of them came out here as gum diggers.
That's right.
And they didn't have a problem then. It was under the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yes.
And they didn't have trouble to leave Croatia. In fact, they left it over centuries. People have been coming and going. But it was only when Tito started up the Yugoslavia and tried to keep people there. He didn't want the intellect disappearing. But yeah, and then of course after it all broke up, things became normalised again.
Righto. Suzanne, this is a lovely book, and we're going to give away a copy right now, if you don't mind. It is Dubrovnik, My Love. Suzanne Brooks-Princevic has been speaking with us this morning and sharing her love, I suspect, of Dubrovnik as well. Just a grudging respect for Dubrovnik on your part, Suzanne?
I love Dubrovnik.
It's gorgeous, just gorgeous. Lovely to have you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
John. Thank you,
my dear. Okay, there we are. And Dubrovnik, My Love.
106.3 Beach FM.